Hello, thank you for being here. I'm Laugesen. I'm going to get us going. In my stage presence, I have a unique style, and I like to be interactive. So for those who are here in person, thank you. I got some questions I'm hoping you're answering, or you will answer. If you're at home watching this or at the office, please answer where you happen to be. But by show of hands, for those who are here, who's experienced a software in production outage? Oh, come on, we just had like half the internet go down like in the last 6 weeks. There's a lot of the room, and I think most folks at home. Now, again, by show of hands, how many of you enjoyed it? No hands. And that is exactly why we're here to talk about DevOps and Power Platform, because Power Platform is a beast to reckon with. It is a place to build simple solutions and the most complex solutions for production workloads. DevOps, it's technologies and a process to help ensure we keep production up and running. So today we're going to talk about, one, a backdrop. And bear with me, the first 3 to 5 minutes, it might seem high level, it might seem meta. Yeah, bear with me, because I promise we have a lot of product capabilities. We have in-product demos across the spectrum of what we mean by using and exercising DevOps. So it'll get real really fast. Just bear with me. And we should have, if we play our cards right, about 5 to 7 minutes for questions at the end. And then if there are any remaining questions, tackle us outside. We have some time. So again, I like to ask questions. For those who are in the room, who's new to exercising DevOps in Power Platform? Ooh, we got some hands. We love to see it. Thank you. How about, who's been doing it for 2+ years? Oh, about an equal amount of hands. I love it. All right, let's see. Those hands, 5+ years. Okay, not quite as many. 10+ years. Any? Okay, well, no one got a gold star today, but that's okay. We have silver stars after this. Now, transitioning, a fun little fact we like to dole out is business solutions in Power Platform that exercise DevOps, they have more usage. Now, what's interesting is it's not the art of exercising DevOps that you beget usage, but it's the exact opposite. It's things that are highly used, things that your organization or your client's organization are highly dependent on. They should be exercising DevOps processes because they have the most to win and the most to lose by not exercising DevOps. Now, if you have your own little swear jar and you've been throwing something in every time I said DevOps, what am I talking about? And I promise we're going to make it real really fast. But in addition to technology, it really is people being intentional about a process they're going to follow for how they build and update software so they can go run production workloads. And that applies for any software, whether it's in Power Platform or outside of Power Platform. And the whole point is keep production running, preserve business continuity, and along the way, continuously improve. Now, a framework that's frequently used when we talk about software development lifecycle or we talk about DevOps is you have an idea, you take that idea, you make it a plan, you build the thing. Well, you code the thing, you build the thing, you test the thing, you deploy the thing, you monitor the thing, or whatever business solution it is that you have. Now, as we talk about some of the capabilities today, we're going to break this model or this framework into kind of 2 facets. We're going to talk about the inner loop, the maker, the creator, the developer. They're on their machine, they're trying to build out an idea and actually have a technical solution for whatever use case. And they're going to chip away at that thing in a tight little inner loop until they feel like, oh, it's ready for prime time. Or maybe not prime time, but maybe it's ready for validation. And if it passes validation, then it goes to production. But if we said inner loop, well, what's the other side? It's the outer loop. And then it's really the life cycle. If you're going to go build and make changes and then put them out into the wild, well, what does it mean to get something into the wild? And then more importantly, how do we tame the wild? Production should never be the wild. It should actually be the most tamed, isolated lab environment where you know what's going on, and if things aren't good, you can go improve it. Okay, and there's a lot of words. We got meta. Thank you for going on this journey with me. And it may have sounded complicated, so why not dev and prod? I think I answered it earlier. I'm not going to read the list and the litany of reasons, but it's really about preserving and maximizing business continuity. Like, you know, tech is a means to an end for us to do our jobs. And we want to continuously do our jobs, and we don't want things to get into the way. Now, for what I've been talking about, and for some of the capabilities, actually a lot of the capabilities you're going to see today, some of you will say, oh yeah, we're using that. Oh, sweet, I like the latest and greatest. Some of you are going to reflect and say, I didn't know about that capability. I didn't even know we should do that. And that's to say, how you exercise DevOps, it varies, and there's a maturity curve. And that's okay, it's a journey. It doesn't matter where you are on this maturity curve. We're here to support you for as far as you want to go. And just know, the whole point of DevOps is about, you know, having people follow a process where you create this iterative loop of continuous improvement. Now, without further ado, we're actually going to go get nitty-gritty, talk about product capabilities, and get into some cool demos. And I'd like to hand it off to my colleague, Casey.
All right, thanks, Austin. So just to start out, I know some folks said they were new in the room, and so apologies to everyone else if this might seem a little redundant, but I want everyone to start on the same page here. So within Power Platform, as we start the inner loop in development, that always starts with a solution. And so solution, think of it as a container for all the assets that you build across Power Platform. So that's going to be your agents, the automations that go with them, maybe your data model, applications, and everything that forms up the broader application that you want to ultimately move to production at a later state. Okay, so think about it as the container and the files within that, as well as it's your source code. Now, this can be a little bit overloaded because we create these abstraction layers on top. And so it is also the binary. And we differentiate that between unmanaged, which is basically that container, as well as the files in your source code. And then there's the managed binary, though. And that is actually what you're going to send to production. So we're going to check those files into source control. We're going to build the artifact and deploy it to production. So the first thing that we will look at here is native source code integration. So we announced this last year and have been evolving it ever since. But really what it's designed to do is to democratize the developer inner loop. So think about fusion teams working together where you might have, say, more functional or business users, and they're also collaborating with the professional developers. And so pro devs, they work in source control all day, and these are familiar concepts using Git branches and everything like that. Maybe not so much for everyone, though, that is on the project, okay? So we want to make it easy enough to where they can just say, we're going to commit those changes directly to source control, and they don't really have to understand the other complexities behind it. Okay, so another trending question that we get is, so what about agents? So does the process really change if I'm building and deploying agents? And the short answer is that, well, the tools are evolving in the age of AI. We're adding things like evals and so forth. The process is a change management process, and that is designed to deal with agents that change very frequently, right? And we also design it in a way so that everything that you build in Power Platform is going to be able to go through the DevOps process very consistently. Okay, so quick show of hands, who's used Canvas apps and source control for Canvas apps? Sorry. Okay, a few people. Awesome, yeah, so this has been an evolving space as well. So the Canvas app now, you can actually get at the code level. And ultimately, that's what we're going to be checking into source control. We'll build and deploy it. Now, same thing for code apps, right? So the difference is Canvas is a low-code component, right? So that's going to be broken down into different YAML files. The real code behind the Canvas app is actually generated by us at runtime. But it's still code at the end of the day. Code apps is actually TypeScript code that you write and deploy. So you're going to see the actual source code as far as TypeScript files and so forth within your repository. Okay, and then the same goes for generative pages. And so main thing here is it does now support source code integration, and it is solution aware, meaning that you can package it along with your other customizations. Just gonna wake up my demo machine here. Okay, so this agent that I've been working on is started from a real use case, actually. So as a product manager focusing on DevOps, I get a lot of questions every single day on, when is X feature releasing? How does this work within DevOps and so forth? And I love to be able to talk to customers and answer everyone's questions. Unfortunately, there's a lot of them. And so I wanted to streamline that a little bit. So I built an agent to do that. And so this is kind of a little different version of it, I would say, but I'll just kind of give you a quick rundown. So I've been working on it, added a bunch of knowledge sources as far as like a knowledge base that answers common questions. There's even a link to a GitHub repo that has some ALM labs within it. And so we'll just give it a quick test here. And let's ask it about DevOps best practices. If I can type. Let's see what it comes back with. It's waking up a little bit. Hey, there we go. Use preferred solutions. I'd say this is pretty good advice. All right, we're gonna go ahead and check this version into my source control repo. Okay, so you can see that it flagged an update for that knowledge source that I added. I'll go ahead and give it a quick commit comment. All right. And main difference here is if you've been familiar with some of our tooling that we had before these, kind of native or in-product capabilities came out, this solution is fairly large, and I'll just show you that. So there's a lot of different objects within this solution. So in the past, you would have to export this entire solution every time, which takes a while as the solution gets larger and larger, and then you would have to unpack the whole thing and commit that into your repo. Now we're only dealing with just the diffs. And so you can see it was actually pretty fast. Commits just that small change, and we'll look at that in source control in a minute here. Now, the second thing I want to show you is pay attention to the environment that I'm in right now. So development 1. So I'm just going to play multiple personas just because it's just me up here, but think about as I go to now development 2 environment, this could be another developer or another maker in your organization. So working in their own isolated environment. And they see that these changes, let me just check for updates really quick. And there's a merge conflict, so I'm just gonna go ahead and accept the incoming change. Okay, and now all those changes are available and I can just pull them directly into my environment. And again, this just takes a second. So what that gives you is isolation within your own environment and a cleaner check-in, check-out process to collaborate efficiently, but also not have a bunch of other people that are impacting your work within your development space. All right? So, yeah, you can see that just took a second. The other thing, and I promise not to do too much vibe coding today. I know you guys have all seen a lot of that this week. That's not really what this session is about. But I just wanted to show you something that is kind of cool with this. So we talked about generative pages, and I've been kind of mucking around with this one. And so I can make any small change here. So for example, I'm just going to copy that one again, actually. And it's pretty good at just running through the code, and it can go ahead and take that priority field and make it not required. Okay, so you can see it's kind of analyzing the files. It's going to identify where that is in the code stack. And granted, that's a small change. It'd probably be pretty easy to just do it manually as well. But the cool thing is you can do it both ways, right? So it made that change. But what I also wanted to show you is because this is backed by source control, then you have the full flexibility to go and do, say, VS Code, right? And you can just automatically sync that locally, and you have access to, if you're like an avid vibe coder, for example, you can go down and see all the different GPT models and so forth, or professional developers more commonly. Okay, so I'm going to switch back now to our main deck. And we're going to talk a little bit about the outer loop. Let me just get this set up too. Okay. So that's kind of, at a high level, the inner loop process, really. It's all about collaboration, team-based development, and doing that in more of a structured way. And that's super important as your team scales to, say, 5 developers, 10 developers, 20. I was at a customer site last week that for one project they had 50 developers on it, right? And so that's really the proper way to do it. You'll notice that everyone's kind of jamming in the same environment. It can get pretty crowded, and people start stepping on each other. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Yep. So as far as the outer loop goes, we started on this journey a few years ago. We announced pipelines in Power Platform. It's become highly adopted as kind of a low-code maker-friendly way to deploy solutions to target environments automatically. We've evolved it with hundreds of new capabilities since, and that kind of put us on this trajectory to we realize that really this is the model that the majority of our customers want to adopt, they can use, but at the same time, we have to make it powerful enough for our pro developer community. Okay, and that's what I wanted to talk about too. So if you're, say, a developer or a dev lead on a project, you might think about scale a little bit differently than your IT admin or maybe your CIO would, right? So you're trying to think about, how do I onboard new developers? How does the architecture of my solution scale? Whereas the IT admin is saying, I have hundreds, maybe thousands of projects, and they have different levels of sophistication. So how can I have a tool set that is going to scale across the breadth of my entire portfolio? And that's what we're doing here with the integrated DevOps story that you're seeing today. So whether you're a citizen developer, we're trying to make it easy enough to where you can go ahead and use source code integration, you can use pipelines, you can use monitoring, but also for our code-first developers, that it's fully extensible, that we have our developer tooling that's compatible with it, and that for our IT pros, that can scale org-wide without needing to go install a bunch of different tools, right? Okay, so the next thing is around evals. I mentioned that a little bit ago. So this is a really exciting space in the AI world, definitely something to keep an eye on. And as far as how it fits into your DevOps process, to make sure that your agents are giving consistent outputs as they change frequently. So for example, upgrading the AI model that it's running under, you want to make sure that it's giving consistent outputs. Something that is new is inline deployment, and Copilot Studio is going to be coming out very soon. So kind of on that far left end of the spectrum, as you saw. This is more geared towards our citizen developers, where it's available directly inline, and they can go ahead and just click a couple buttons and deploy their agent. Okay, so the other new thing is we talked about pipelines, we talked about source code integration. Well, how do they work together? And so this is super important because you don't want to necessarily export things directly from your environment when you have source code as your source of truth. So I'm going to demo this in a minute, but ultimately that's what we're going to do. We're going to generate that build directly from your release branch. And then we have the deployment hub. So once I submit that solution, it's going to go to an admin for approval. They're going to review all the details and approve or reject my deployment. Let's see if I can. Oh, the animations. I thought I got them all. Sorry about that. Okay. So let's go ahead and step into just another quick demo, and I'll show you that. All right, so I showed you this agent a little bit ago that I've been working on. We checked our changes into source control. And now for a citizen developer, it's really easy, just directly in line. I'm gonna refresh. Browser went a little cold on me. And once this loads, the deploy button is available now, just directly within Copilot Studio. It's a lot more discoverable. There's a lot of admin controls around this as well. So for example, if you were to block sharing or block publishing to certain channels in their dev environment, this is the direct path forward because the admin said, no, we actually don't want to overshare in our development environments. We want to go ahead and deploy that to production. We're going to do that in a secure way. So for example, this pipeline is set up to deploy as a service principal. Okay. So the next thing is I just talked about deploying from source control. So I have a second pipeline here I just wanted to show you, and I'm going to go into the solution view that has a lot more information available. So if I look at the pipeline, I bound it to my release branch, source control. This is where it's going to build and deploy from. So for example, you can see that the current version is .4. Let me just update the version really quick in my live environment. So you can see that that's not what I'm going to be deploying. So I'll go back to the pipelines page really quick, and we'll go ahead and kick off deployment. And so now it's just giving me a nice reminder that, hey, there's actually a version difference between what is on your release branch, what's in your environment. It's flagging that just as a reminder to say, hey, go ahead and merge your changes into the release branch. In my case, I'm actually, I have some pending changes, for example. Don't really, but we'll pretend like I do. In my dev environment that are not ready to go to production. Okay, so that's kind of the reasoning behind it. So we'll click next. And what it's doing right now is it's analyzing the files in the repo. And it's making decisions based on, are there any DLP policies that are going to be violated with this deployment? Are there any missing dependencies in the solution? And then the other thing that it's doing is it's using AI to generate a summary of everything that I'm about to deploy. And the reason for that is so admins have a quick and easy view of the risks associated with this solution. So the next thing is, because I mentioned that I'm deploying with the service principal, I don't have access in the production environment. It means I can't dev in prod, and I also don't have the ability to share in prod. Instead, my sharing request is going to get reviewed along with the deployment. And if that gets approved, then everything happens automatically. Okay, so I'm just going to hop over really quick, and we're going to go into the admin deployment hub. Let me just get on the right one here. And we'll take a quick look at that. Okay, so you can see all the pertinent information about the deployment. There are automated tests running. You can go ahead and look at a report. This one says that they passed. And then this is that AI-generated release notes that I was talking about. So it gives an admin a really good idea of exactly what is going on with this deployment. But also, because we're deploying from source control, I get a nice commit link. So I can see exactly what changed with this deployment. I can get down to the code level and review it for any risks. And so this is obviously a really small change, so I'm not too worried about it. And I'll approve my own deployment, even though in the real world, you probably shouldn't do that. Okay. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about And it's another really common question that we get is, okay, that's great, but I have 100 projects, I have 1,000 projects. How do I take a consistent DevOps process, tool set, and enforce it across all my projects? We want everything to be automated, right? As an IT admin, they don't have time in their day to be manually creating environments, setting up pipelines and all that fun stuff for every single maker in their organization. So the first thing typically recommend is to set up environment routing. So that's gonna get every single developer their own isolated development environment instead of going and building in the default environment. The next thing that you can do is we want to prevent pseudo production. So maker got their own development environment. We don't want them sharing their agents out with hundreds, thousands of people, maybe even the whole company, right? So we might want to set that at like 10, maybe 20. That way they can collaborate with other makers, but it never becomes a production environment. Instead, they're going to use the DevOps process that was outlined to securely deploy to production. Okay, that can be managed at scale with environment groups and rules. And so the common use case here is I want to have different policies across my different workloads. So maybe we have a certain set of rules for, say, citizen developers, and for our enterprise applications, we might have a different set of rules. So the last thing here is I want to talk about the default pipeline. So it takes a little bit to set up secure deployments, with service principles and all that fun stuff. Right? Well, with this, you can create the shape of the pipeline, set it up, and say we want a standard, dev, test, production process that everyone has to go through. And then you can set that as the default pipeline in an environment group. And the way that works is that as makers get routed to their own environment, they also get access to a pipeline, and they can securely deploy without admins having to go in and manually manage their pipelines. So just to go back to the demo really quick here, I'll give you a little tour of what that looks like. So we talked a little bit about the deployment hub here. I can manage all the settings across my different hosts. I can set up a new installation. Think of a host as like the brain that manages the DevOps process, and it can be either localized for like a specific business unit, or you can have a single host across your entire tenant. So I can do things like set up a default host that everyone is going to work within, the same set of rules, the same security, and so forth. The next thing is I can go over to my environment groups, and I can set up environment routing. And so do I want this routing rule effectively to apply to all users, or do I want to maybe have different rules for the different environment groups within the org? So we'll drill into the enterprise zone, as I name this one. And you can set up your sharing limits directly within here. So for example, sharing agents with viewer permissions, and we can go ahead and set that to 20. And again, that's to prevent oversharing within these development environments. And then the last thing is I'm going to go ahead and look at that default pipeline rule. And so I can select that pipeline's host, and whether I want this group to use that pipeline that deploys from source control, I can set that, or I can set them up with this default pipeline that I created. We'll go back. All right, and with that, I'm going to hand it back to Austin.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Casey. Man, Casey showed us all these beautiful ways to get things to production. But once you get things to production, there's that age-old question. If I get an agent to production, or a flow, or an app, or a combination of all of them, if they fall over, will I know? Well, and with Monitor, you will. And so there's the Power Platform Monitor experience. It's really like three big things. It is out of box. You get operational health metrics on apps, on flows, on agents, in all the variants of the apps, flows, and agents. Because if you don't know how to measure health, well, don't worry. We'll give you an idea. We'll tell you right in the product. But then 2, measuring health only gets us so far. Well, we include recommendations where there's degraded health and we can calculate a measurable opportunity for improvement. We'll just tell you in line, oh, hey, your app open success rate was not great. But look, all the failures are due to licensing issues or due to permission issues. Here are the users you can go share with or give a license to, or at least review to evaluate if you want to do that. And then new, as of like the May-ish timeframe, and it's only grown and gotten bigger, a preview feature is alerts. Because how do you really want to stay on top of health degrading? It's, not everyone wants to go to a web portal to hit refresh or sign in daily to understand, did something go south or something I care about go south? Well, which is why we have the preview capability of alerts, which with time, we're working on it. We'll get it to the GA bar. Because alerts are all about, hey, you tell us what you care about, and we'll tell you when things start to go south. And in addition to introducing alerts, like anyone who has used the Power Platform Monitor experience, we had an overview page that it left a little bit to be desired. And we knew that, we were aware of that. It was a temporary state, and now we're much closer to our desired state, which is more about, well, when you come to monitor, we have a radar set up for you. If there's something on the radar, there's something you want to look into for preserving and boosting your business continuity. And then if you've used alerts, you may have observed in the past, it was all about, well, you can find things that go south at the environment scope. We built monitor in a way that you can see, did apps across an environment fall below a threshold? Did flows across an environment fall below a threshold? One, that was to help monitor at scale. But then it comes with the contrast of, I don't care about every app. I don't care about every flow. I don't care about every agent. And we understand that and we respect that. And so now we introduce resource scope alerts. So you can just put alerts on the most important or mission critical resources in your tenant. And so now I get the luxury of waking up my demo machine. And we're going to drop into the monitor experience inside Power Platform. And so one, this is the refreshed overview page. And there's 2 things I want to highlight. Because one, this being a relatively new feature, we love the growth we've seen in adoption, but there's still plenty of people who have yet to adopt. And so looking at the right-hand side, we included out-of-box alerts. There's some of you, if you think back to that DevOps maturity curve, we're all at different points. And for those who aren't that far on the journey, well, we created out-of-box alerts to help you understand, hey, if you weren't looking, we at least want to give you insight into highly used resources that you may care about, or highly used resources with degradations. People are using this thing, your organization's using this thing, and you may want to improve it. And so beyond a donut pie chart, like what is the alert experience? One, you drop into a triggered alert. And then 2, with time, you'll get the list of resources that are triggering that alert. These are the things that need attention. And a list of resources isn't always that great. But you get more than that. One, you actually get the health metrics. You can look at them across the resource. But then 2, you can also get the resource owner. If you're the operations team or you're the center of excellence team, you may care about the burden of preserving business continuity, but you may not carry the burden of fixing the problem. But we'll lead you to who is probably accountable and can be at least a stakeholder in helping solve it. Now, we're all reflecting. Out-of-box alerts, one size fits all. That t-shirt, that hat, that never fits. Which is why we didn't stop at out-of-box alerts. We have custom alerts. So you can go set the thresholds that you care about in the environments and on the resources that you care about. And so I'm not going to go through the full wizard, but it is just a one-pane experience to say, oh, that mission-critical app, and it could be the mission-critical environment and you scan all apps in that environment, or it could be that one specific app that the CEO uses. That is a real use case for a lot of our customers. You'll pick the resource, and you'll pick the metric, and you'll pick your threshold. We know our one-size-fits-all doesn't fit all. Or excuse me, our out-of-box doesn't fit all. However, that's why we have custom alerts. So you can say, these are my organization's SLAs. These are my organization's thresholds, or the things you care about. You can set your severities, and then you get to set who's going to receive a notification when our system detects, hey, something went south. You didn't have to come to the admin center. You didn't have to come to a web portal. No one did. The system will reach out to you to say, hey, you probably want to pay attention. Now, one thing I love to highlight, a mantra we had inside of the company, or back with the team, was Monitor will deliver the most value with breadth, with depth, and with alerts. And when I say breadth and depth, if I go back to 1 year ago in Chicago at Ignite, I had the luxury of showing off the initial preview of Monitor, and we only had 3 Canvas app metrics. But now we have Canvas app metrics, model app metrics, code app metrics. We have Power Automate, Cloud Flow metrics. We have desktop flow metrics. We have work queue metrics. We have Copilot Studio agent metrics that landed literally like a week or 2 ago. And so this is to say our breadth comes from covering more of the products or the Power Platform portfolio. And then our depth comes from giving you a slew of metrics. And some of what is hot off the press, in some of the most common use cases that customers have operational health issues with, is not just opening the app, not just end users waiting for that first screen, but end users waiting for the most used screens inside of the app. So understanding latencies between app navigation experiences. That means waiting for the screen to appear, and also metrics on waiting for the data to appear on that screen. But then going even more granular, frequently people will create an app that end users can access. Maybe getting to a screen is fast, but the data doesn't load. And so we've introduced data request specific metrics on, well, do you have apps connected to data sources that fail to return data, or they take forever to return data? And this is all now just out of box. I can't even click on this because it's currently deploying. And so this is real. This is rolling out right now, but not such that I can show this off. Now, I'd mentioned our breadth and our depth, so I won't completely click into every wizard. But what I want to go back to, and what I want to highlight, is that if you go through the DevOps cycle of building a thing, deploying a thing, and getting it to production, well, Monitor's there to give you a measurable, objective means to detect, did something fall over? And should we go repeat the loop? We have something to improve. We'll tell you about it. Because we're all about continuously improving. So with that, I want to say thank you so much for being here. We have this slide to tease out other breakout sessions with related material or complementary material, but not quite the same. We have short links if you want to learn more about any of the capabilities we showed off here. And we have about 5 minutes for questions if you want to come to the center for the mic. We can take questions now, and we can also, you can tackle us outside. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, we got to get a selfie before we leave.
Get the what?
A selfie.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Oh, I love it. Come on up. Come on up.
First, a question about the monitoring and alerting.
Oh, please.
For the alerts,
Yeah.
is it email only, or can you send it
Right
off to-
now, yes. But in the next calendar year, I'm looking at my team back home watching the recording. The answer better be no, there's more.
Good.
But right now, it's email only.
And is that Microsoft only, like your Microsoft Entra tenant email users?
No,
Can you send it to an external email?
ask me. Okay, I'm going to be at the booth 2:30 to 6. Ask me offline. I think you can set any email.
Okay.
There are some constraints because we don't want people to create a spam bot. Unlikely, but please.
Are you supporting GitHub for source control yet?
I knew we were going to get the question.
Ask that question.
I could put it into the agent really quick. The agent that I was showing you can answer that question. but I would say chances are very good in the near future.
Okay, great. One more.
Can we say the team is working on it? Just that, like, we don't say when it lands, but we'll say that we're working on it.
All right.
Yeah.
With pipelines, can you deploy a solution into a catalog
Not
or
currently.
publish to a catalog?
Yeah, you can't currently. And there's a million ways to extend it. So technically, if it's possible, but you could always use, like, if you want to integrate a pipeline, you could use an Azure DevOps pipeline. Would probably be the best way to do it.
All right. I've got more, but there's a lot.
Hi. How it works is the integration between the Power Apps pipelines and source control. You talk about that it's coming soon.
Yeah, with sorry, which one? The Vibe?
The Power Apps pipelines integration with the source control that you talk about, that I saw that it's coming soon, a new feature. How it works, this integration.
Yeah, so, and that's what I was showing during the demo. So effectively, you can associate the pipeline with a release branch in source control. And so what that does is, like, if you take a standard pipeline, it exports the solution from your environment and deploys it. This, when it's connected to Git, does not do that. So it will actually read the files from the release branch associated, and it builds the solution from the files in that branch, so that version, and it deploys that.
Okay, I understand that, but the thing is, I don't know why, if from the pipelines I cannot make commits, so I should do it with the source control. But then I still don't get how you can then get the recent modifications that maybe other colleagues made on the same project and so on and so forth. So it's kind of tricky. I still don't get it.
Yeah, and that's just kind of your standard, inner loop process. So you might have, for example, a feature branch that you're working on, or maybe you have your own developer branch, and then you would merge those changes in through your pull request into your release branch. Other developers would also push their pull requests into that same release branch, and so that's when you generate your build from. So
Okay.
you'll have to merge those in.
Okay, well, I have also made some questions.
Yeah, let's chat after. Yeah.
So, thanks for your talk. We use the ALM accelerator a lot, so it's not maintained anymore. And the ALM accelerator, for example, for flows, had some standard profiles for who should be the user when you deploy a flow, or who, and the connection profiles and so on. Is this all now integrated in the source control-based deployment pipelines? Can I configure it Can I set for environments default owners of flows and connection profiles like I could in the ALM accelerator?
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
it still supports all your, connections, connection references, your environment variables, the ability to share and set up, service principal deployments. All the stuff from existing pipelines is still supported with the source control backed pipelines.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, I wonder what your recommendations if you have dev and test and production in different tenants?
Yeah, that's a scenario. There are limitations to, like, what you can do with everything that's out of the box. When you want to go cross tenant, that's when I would go to, like, for the actual release part, I would go to something like Azure DevOps or GitHub Actions. It's going to be a lot better for those types of scenarios. And it's super common, so it's definitely a use case for monitoring for, like, the out-of-the-box stuff. But you can absolutely use, like, in your, say, dev tenant, you can use source code integration there, and then, like an Azure pipeline, GitHub Action to release it to your prod tenant.
Okay, thanks.
Well, yeah, you guys have to go up to app source, and yeah, it's just not directly integrated there. So.
No, that's fine. Really good. So, do you have an integration with the monitor and the OpenTelemetry?
Sorry, integration with monitor and what?
OTels, OpenTelemetry agents.
Copilot agent?
No, OpenTelemetry.
OpenTelemetry?
Yeah.
Or you mean just like data export, or having other data streams feed into monitor?
Sorry, what was that?
Sorry, can you elaborate?
So,
on OpenTelemetry?
my problem with most of the operations which we do is we either push to log analytics or insights, and then I pull the data, and then I'll push it into, say, Splunk or somewhere. So, is there any integration with Monitor and OpenTelemetry so that we can deploy the agents and
okay.
pull it down to sync?
Here, we should actually go to the hub to ask this question. My understanding right now is Copilot Studio agents don't follow the OpenTelemetry format or that schema. However, there are people in that product group. I'm traditionally in the Power App side, and I work on the Monitor horizontal. I have a colleague in Copilot Studio that I know is working on that type of change.
Okay.
So it's just easier for Copilot Studio agents to emit data in that schema. But the answer is no right now. If you meet me at the hub, I might be able to find someone who can elaborate more on when it will.
Okay, and one last question. So when you have all these pipelines, do you also can templatize them?
Can you what them?
Templatize, like keep them as a templates,
Also,
and
get
then
tear down.
do more.
Sorry, 1 second. We can answer that, but we got to tear down and then do it over there. Thank you, thank you,
Thank you all.